All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Key to Games podcast, where we discuss game design and industry topics. I am Josh Blaser, and join me, my co-host, the indie game developer behind the upcoming game Samurai Pig, Joshua Reyes. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh. Recovering, had a little bit of cold this week. A lot of work on Samurai Pig, but other than that, doing great. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing all right. I'm dealing with allergy, maybe combination of allergy,
Maybe.
sickness, or who knows, and busy with the channel, writings, and all that good stuff. I see we just passed 8,700 subscribers here, so thank you,
Yeah,
everybody. We are getting up there. I need to start planning some things to do for 9K and beyond. So I need to start
that's
thinking of some
wild,
really great
Josh.
ideas.
That's great.
And welcome to the chat as well. So, our topic this week is going to be discussing live service, and specifically, what does it mean to kind of develop a game around this mindset and the amount of work that can go into it. So, kind of the news bit, yeah, I know, or I do owe everyone some Hitman play too. Gotta get that stealth on. But Hitman's actually another good example of live service.
There you
So,
go.
so the news that kind of dominated the conversation is Team Fortress 2. Now, Team Fortress 2, I believe, is what? 14?
2007,
Yeah, so that would be 15 years old at this
15
point,
years. Yeah.
which is crazy to hear about. And the game, of course, has been updated, but it kind of went very much under the radar. But even though people are still playing and paying for it, Valve has been, again, very noticeably absent from developing it, supporting it, and doing any kind of work with it. And the game has fallen to bots, spammers, and it's just not in a good position if you are somebody brand new wanting to play the game or even a returning fan.
Yeah.
So there was the hashtag, I think it was like free TF2 or save
Safe
TF2,
gift too. Hmm.
and people are demanding of Valve to at least get this game into a position where, it can still be relatively playable. And it kind of led to this discussion again of what does it mean to support a game long term. So one of the more interesting things is if we look at some stats, what's happening right now. Dead by Daylight just celebrated 6 years of development. Dragon Ball Legends is at 4. Arknights, which is the mobile game I'm playing, is at 3. Path of Exile and Warframe, I believe that was 2014, so that would be 8 years they're celebrating right now in terms of support. So, one of the big things that I talked about in my next book, oh, yep,
Final Fantasy 11,
oh, yeah,
20 years. 20 years.
Whew, damn. And of course, World of Warcraft is
2
what?
million.
Yeah, infinite years.
Infinite.
Yeah. And what I've talked about in my upcoming book, and I actually have a post that will probably go up this week on the topic as well, is that live service really has fundamentally changed what it means to develop a game, whether it's a single player or a multiplayer game, especially multiplayer. I think that's one of the big aspects of it. Because for those of you who remember, 30 years plus, most games did not get support after release. They got
No.
maybe a patch, maybe they fixed technical issues if you're lucky,
Right.
but, DLC, expansions, no. I'm sure we all remember, the 8 additional factions that were added to StarCraft. Or, the 20 more units or factions in Command and Conquer. And
Right.
somewhere a Blizzard studio developers got like a heart attack thinking about trying to add more factions to StarCraft. And most of these multiplayer games were pretty much set up around game comes out, we play it, maybe there's a hardcore following, maybe it's not, but, developers were moving on to the next game. Live service, again, with the rise of World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Team Fortress 2, that completely shifted what people have come to expect out of multiplayer games. And even, we could argue, single player games as well, with many single player titles receiving additional content, months of support. And again, like I've said, it really has fundamentally changed, I think, for developers, what your plans are when it comes to working on a game.
Yeah, when you're talking about the change, it's single player games are almost like games of service, right? They're almost expected to be updated, patched way more consistently. So even if you are doing a single player game, like you said, you have to be planning for the future if and when and being prepared. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I'm sure when they were making Team Fortress when it came out, I don't think they were expecting it to live this long, right?
No.
They had no idea that they'd have such a fervent community around it, that it would be like a meme world and trading and community. So, but now, games made now, we need to be aware and plan and be ready for that because that's like the expectation now, right?
Yeah, and there was a talk I think one of Valve's employees gave in 2012 for the GDC that they were talking about transitioning Team Fortress into a live service or free to play game. And they very much said that kind of challenge is that on one hand, you want to keep supporting this game. On the other hand, if you're not making money, you're basically throwing money out the window to keep people happy. And one of the things, another thing I talk about in the live service or in the free to play book is that at the end of the day, developers deserve money for what they develop. And the challenge is figuring out where that line is. Because again, no developer deserves all your money. They don't. You shouldn't be asking someone to spend $500, $1,000, a month on a game, or buying all the hats and capes and pants.
You
That
buy all the hats.
yeah, and it is that challenge. The goal of live service is that you should be developing content that people want to buy so that affords you the ability to make more content, and this loop just keeps happening as long as you're developing the game. But of course, the question is, how do you prepare for this?
Right. So the thing is like we were saying before, okay, like games coming out in 2007 or earlier, they were unaware. Okay, my game's going to stick around for 20 years. I don't think anybody expected those types of things. Now we're in a different mindset. So, okay, now we know that possibly you're releasing a game, mainly even multiplayer, even single,
Mm-hmm.
that you need to plan how you're going to support it. For one, and I think one of the most important things is going to be like your community. If you looked at the save, what was it, save TF2
Yeah.
hashtag, it was like they made a protest. They were doing like a little protest. I don't say little, it's massive probably, and they were
Mm-hmm.
protesting nicely, not aggressive toward the devs and stuff like that. But the community is what's going to keep it alive, and it's going to change the game and make sure it doesn't, because like it was really stagnating with the bots, I think, for like 2 3 years, and Valve, like you said, Valve was very quiet. If I look at the numbers right now, I got 67,000 average on the month that play, 67K. Final Fantasy had 26K.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in perspective. That many people are playing that game. That's a massive community. So anyway, first thing is you need like your community, right? You need to have a way. How are you going to forge your community? How are you going to speak to your community? Things like bug reporting, and just like you really need to keep up with the community. Number one, I think that's the most important thing for an online. And then, of course, planning, right? Like, how are you going to plan ahead for this? How are we going to patch things? What do we do if we have server outages? What do we do with bots? How are we going to, how are we going to keep the game secure? Like what encountered TF2? Because I know I'm not the only person that have gone into like some old MMO, any MMO, and all you see is just like guild farmers and stuff like that, which can totally destroy a game. So you have to keep all those facets an idea, like security, patching, planning, community, and then of course, what are you going to do when you finally are going to drop it? It's not making money, and
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to do to that? And I think that's a super important thing too, right? How are you going to birth it, and then how are you going to let it sail off, or am I going to give it to the community so they can run
Mm-hmm.
servers and they can enjoy it and they can continue moving on, or are we just going to shut it down, or what are we going to do? Like all of those things have to be, and that's just that's just a slice of the things that we need to be thinking about when we're planning for that, right?
Mm-hmm. And what you said a few minutes about planning your game in the offset, especially making a multiplayer game, is very important. Because I think this is another thing for a lot of indie developers who may not realize that if you are working on a game that you intend to focus on multiplayer, you're developing a live service game at the same time, whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
Because I think the days in which you could release like a little local multiplayer game, maybe it's like an hour of content, 2 to 4 players, and that's it. People aren't, I think, really interested in that anymore.
No.
Especially when you're sitting next to something like a Warframe or Dead by Daylight, or again, pick any mobile game where you can guarantee if it takes off to have years of content coming to
Yeah.
that game. So why
Hmm.
should I play your little game? And not only that, but the multiplayer, like if your game's only local only multiplayer,
Yeah,
like
man.
that, again, like we talked about and we've used, Steam's remote play, and that is a very great feature, but that's still building your game on the assumption of using someone else's software. And
Exactly.
if Steam decides, what, this isn't working, or we don't want to keep supporting it
Mhm.
anymore, what happens to your game?
Right, and like I said, I've had some old mobile games that have just because I wasn't able to like do some code changes, the support just wasn't worth it. That they're no longer playable anymore. They are not no longer on the store because they decided to change something. Because so those things have to be kept in mind too.
Yep. And it is a very tough position to be in as a developer. And to Aguero's comment about like Overwatch, like again, just as we saw with kind of the everyone trying to be the next esport, this was about like 20 years ago, like peak StarCraft 2 era.
Yeah,
Everyone is trying to be the next live service grade. They want to be the next Fortnite or the next Path of Exile. But as Josh just said, it's really about the community. The community is going to be your life or death as a live service game. If people are going to stick with it for years and years and spend money for years
yeah,
and years, you have a potential gold mine. But if you piss them off or you're not doing enough that keeps them happy and they all leave, your game is dead. And I mean,
right.
we saw this with Evolve. We've seen this with like any number of kind of smaller to mid tier live service games. We kind of saw this with Planetary Annihilation, that it got a very hardcore following and everybody else dropped off. And you need that very healthy community if you want your game to survive.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, so like community building number one. And like if you get your and even if you're single player, getting a community involved in your game from the beginning will just really help you and give you a big advantage because like I said, the game will live or die on your community. Word of mouth, way important. Who you
Mm-hmm.
want to play if your friends are playing the game, then you want to play with your friends. And if nobody's playing the game, no one's playing the game.
Yeah, my camera just went completely out. Oh, and there we go. I
There
seem
we
to
go.
be
That's good.
phasing in and out of existence there. Yeah, and exactly, and that's been something that I talked with Ramin about when we were discussing the MMOG genre. That a key part of the success of these games has been, my friend is playing this game, so I'm going to play this game. We
Right.
join a guild or we form a guild, and now we have all these people. So why should I switch to your game when I don't have all my friends, I have all my guildmates? Most people just said no. I'm going to stick with WoW, do or die. Just as most people, when they find their Candy Crush or their Clash of Clans or whatever,
Mhm.
they're not going to switch. Why should they?
Right. And again, like you said, those games, like they have it on lock. Like they're constant content coming out. They're always putting stuff out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
those games are always being worked
Yep.
on and always updated. So,
And that's another big point is that, as we've said, you need to think about what is long-term support your game going to look like. Are you going to release a new character every month? How about a
mhm,
new banner every 2 to 3 weeks? A new season 3 months, 6 months? I know with Warframe, they usually have like one mega patch or mega expansion, I think, every year. But I'm sure they also have, quarterly or even monthly
yeah,
patches just for, fixing
bug
bugs, like
fixes.
updates and so on.
Right. And again, so like that's another thing to keep in mind. So depending on how you're building your game, what engine you use, you need to make sure that you have a proper way to patch your game, right, in a reliable way. And you have that also figured out, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
can't really just like start patching a game, you've released it, and then you're like, okay, well, how do I have that has to be built in. Like again, plan for, well, what am I going to release? Am I going to make I'm going to do characters. Well, then the way you structure your DLC releases is the code base and stuff will be dependent on that. So planning ahead for what type of characters you want to release, or you want again
Mm-hmm.
banners and stuff like that. But you have to plan ahead and have that patching, the ability to patch and then communicate with your community. And so okay, well here's what's in the patch note, and then of course bug reporting. Have some type of crash or bug reporting software also, because you got to keep knowing what's going on and with the game.
And like you said, community support is a very big deal. Like if you're working on something, you gotta let people know about it.
Yeah.
We've seen people put out trailers and teasers and concept art and so on to give everyone an idea of, hey, we got this coming in 3 months. Hey, we got this coming in 1 month. This is coming next week. And this is also a very big marketing opportunity. Because whenever we see any live service game has, a half year anniversary, a year anniversary, whatever, they are going to shout out to every social media platform they're on, because, again, this is oftentimes the best chance for new players to get in, they get free stuff, or it's just a way to get everybody excited and say, okay, for this anniversary, all of this is going to change, which means it's a great place to get started.
Right. And then you get all, old players, new players coming together, really bring it in. Like I was just talking about Final Fantasy XI's 20th anniversary. It's going on right now. Well, I think it's still going on. But like basically everything is available, all these little special items you can get in minions. It's all available right now. So new players, old players can come in and experience the game. And that's one of the really cool things also about live service games mostly, is that they can continue to get better, and you can drop in and it's probably like the best time ever to drop into the game, right? Depending, but it can be
Mm-hmm.
really improved depending on the game. So it's a really cool space that we're at when we're allowed to we can see games grow like that.
Yep. And another big point is that some of these games can become fundamentally different titles
Mhm.
from year one to year four and so on. And it's again that very big challenge of, how do you support this game? What is your game plan? Because like we said with Team Fortress, they weren't thinking about
At all.
15 years worth of content at that time.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to consider again, what is scalable in terms of my game? If I'm building a hero collector, then obviously more heroes. If it's a multiplayer competitive style game, then you need to think about new maps, new weapons, because this is the kind of stuff that people are going to gravitate towards because it's gameplay affecting. You can, lock a bunch of artists in a room and have them, come up with, as many hats and shirts you can think of, but that's not going to get somebody to keep playing your game. A new map, a new game mode, a new season, that's the kind of stuff that gets people excited.
Right, yeah, fresh content. And then I think at the pace that gamers are consuming content right now, definitely gotta be going.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you leave it a ghost town, like you were saying, the update's only so much, or it's only so much meat, potatoes on the update, they're gonna go somewhere else where it's much more polished and
Mm-hmm.
they have a plan. So again, the plan of what you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do and how you want to support your game, what it looks like how's it gonna grow. Some games again grow organically, like you were saying. Year one looks dramatically different year four. It's like not even the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can do that also, right? But no, that some of that again, maybe most of that organic growth was from the community, listening to the community saying, we want this or we want that.
Mm-hmm.
And the community, when you listen yeah, you got to be transparent. And when you talk to your community, that really helps build it up in that way, right?
Yeah, and again, it's why so many games now have a very big focus on influencers and streamers
Mhm.
and Twitch people, because that's how you see, the excitement of this game. Pick
Yeah.
any game that's up to a year plus of support, and it will have a dedicated group of streamers and YouTubers who are covering this game. They're either playing it daily or they will stream and cover whenever there's a new update.
Hmm.
And this is again a gold mine for developers because it's free advertising and it's free updates to their respective communities. But again, you have to have that meat on the bone. You can't just
Right.
say we're going to release something maybe in the next 8 months. I don't know, somewhere 6 to 8 months, maybe. And it is tough. And again, I think for a lot of smaller developers, you may not realize the amount of work that can go
Yeah.
into a live service game, even if it is just like a small, let's say it's like a 2v2 game.
Yeah, even that it's going to like explode so
Hmm.
fast and grow the amount of like resources and amount of time and community that you'll need, even a very small game. Yeah. And so if we just extrapolate that and make a larger game, a larger player base, so many gears and cogs turning, then yeah, it can be really tough to do that. But again, uh having a plan is really going to help you out, you know. And then having a plan and a community are like the top ones right there.
Hmm. And one of the things that I talked about in my upcoming post is that, in a way, you have to kind of gauge your game around infinite content. And when I say the term infinite here, I'm referring to, again, let's say your game blows up. Let's say it is the next Fortnite or the next PUBG. And you have people for months, if not years, wanting to play your game. You need to decide, again, how long can I feasibly support this game for? Because again, the second you run out of ideas, or the second that you say we're done with content updates, you just pulled the plug on any more interest in that title.
Right. Yeah, definitely like arrow to the knee that way for sure. Um so yeah, you need sorry man, lost it there.
That you have to be able to plan this stuff out, and you also have to be, again, very realistic about what your studio wants to do with this game.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
again, that's the difference between a single player and a live service game. That a live service game, it is a license to print money for as long as you keep feeding it money in of itself.
Right. Right. You got to have the content updates. Have to have that roadmap, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about the streamers, you have a roadmap of what's coming up, and so you can talk about what's coming up. Okay, we're going to release this. You know, for Halloween, we'll have a Halloween thing, and then Christmas, blah blah blah. And you have a roadmap of what you want to do, so the players know, okay, this is coming up, and then every update, the streamers will talk about it, free advertisement. And I mean, yeah, like you have some MMOs have like very ardent fans, and they will like 2 hour long, like they'll read the patch notes in translation
Mm-hmm.
going over it. So like that's, you know, that's a lot of community engagement that you can get just from constant updates and patches, speculation, lots
Mm-hmm.
of hype. And again, that's all back to community. Again, live service is all community.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that I wanted to touch on, that I wanted to ask your thoughts on, especially the developers, is single player live service. Because this is the other thing, as we said, that has really changed what consumers expect out of a game in the last 10 years. That even a single player game that gets a lot of popularity, people may want to see more. They may want to see more levels or more content, especially if it's like a roguelike or a roguelite game. And it is a tough position to be in. So, my question for you, and again for the chat, let me know what you think about this as well. Is, like, let's say with Samurai Pig that it does blow up, that you know you all of a sudden get that, you get like Among Us numbers all of a sudden, or it people are just saying we want more levels, we want more characters, and so on. And your game is, and it's done. It's 1.0. You shipped it. It's release. Do you consider making it into a live service game then, or do you just say this is what I developed, I'm done, like I'm ready to move on?
Well, me personally,
Yeah.
for Samurai Pit, it would depend on the amount. It would have to be a lot of, I'd have to get like
Mm-hmm.
some real numbers telling me it'd be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the game was not planned this way. It's planned to just be
Yeah.
a release, a few patches for bugs here and there, and then we move on to the next thing. So I probably wouldn't, because again, like I was saying, you need to plan from the beginning. So the game was not planned for infinite content. It was not planned for service. So it is patchable. Yeah, the patching's easy. That's built in with the engine. But
Mm-hmm.
again, that would just be way out of the resources. So if I wasn't planning for it, I would be very weary of going that route. And especially if you lack a lot of the understandings of running a live service again, because it's you doing it yourself as a solo developer. Man, I wish you all the luck. because you're going to need, you really would need a team to help you with this. You're going to need someone for the lead community manager. You're going to need someone, a networking engineer. You're going to need all kind of people to help you, depending on your game. And even the smallest ones, right? So again, to make a long story short, I'd have to say no. And unless you're planning for it, I'd probably recommend against it, because I think you would just be, it's just eat your lunch, all of them, all of your lunches.
Yep. And again, it is a very tough position to be in. And as I think what you said is what we've seen, there is a difference between a developer who kind of has that idea in the back of their mind at the start of, okay, what could I do, DLC A, B, C, and D, versus someone who just kind of gets sprung on them. Okay, all of a sudden we have 500,000 more people buying our game. What do we
Right.
do now? Again, that's kind of the Among Us situation. That Among Us, they were originally going to work on a sequel. Like the first game, it failed. It was not
Yeah.
doing anything. And the rug really got pulled out from underneath them when everyone decided to play that game. And it kind of left them in that very weird position as
So very
to,
bad. Yeah.
okay,
That was
we have millions of eyes on us now. Now what do we do?
right. And again, I think we spoke about that before. Like, you don't really want, like, virality is nice, but you don't really want that unless you're prepared. And again, like, they weren't prepared for that amount of virality, and their game blew up. And then it's like, you're in the position, what do you do? So, like, always, I guess, always be ready to plan, how could we, if the question comes ahead, what would you do, right? At least be ready to know, okay, how could I expand it? Would I do it? At least think about it. Because if you get caught again with the rug pulled out of you, the chances of you pushing that off and succeeding are going to be very low. They're very low anyway. But again, if you're not planning for that long life service in any form or fashion, or even thinking about how you could create content or anything, then yeah, you are really uh, could be in some trouble there.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm looking at the store page for Among Us, and they're still talking about trying to get out features that they were discussing, 6 months, a year ago. And
Right.
that is, again, not what you want to see from a live service game. And it's also one of the reasons why, as a developer these days, you really need 1.0 of your game to be as spotless as it can
Yeah.
be. You
Yeah.
you should not have a game that has issues day one and say, "Hey, we're going to work on this eventually." Question mark at the time when it will be fixed.
Right.
Because as we've said, consumers have multiple options these days. If your game is not giving them what they want, there's probably a few dozen other games of similar quality or similar value. You can just go to that one, and most likely they're not going to come back to yours.
No, not a chance. Again, you would have to generate, right? Like, okay, if they left your game, you'd have to generate a community, a buzz, and have a lot of players playing, and then the person would be like, oh, well, that game got popular again. I guess I'll go check it out, which does happen, right? But not too often, and usually not for indies.
Yeah. So, as another interesting point, as I mentioned Dead by Daylight earlier, I'm hearing a lot of buzz around there's a new Evil Dead game that just came out. And a lot of people are liking it. But at the same time, a lot of people are wondering, okay, what else you got? And again, this is that challenge of a live service game, is that day one content, no matter how great or innovative it is not going to last a long time. I think there's already people at the max level of that game by now, like on every character.
Yeah,
Again, do
yeah.
not underestimate how much someone is going to play a game.
Yeah, yeah, actually a good point, Josh. You are like one of the ones that when I watch you decimate a game and like totally pull it apart, like do not be surprised like that how fast a gamer can tear through your game, uh, find out every bug and just go through it like everything that you've planned in a game, and then you watch someone play it and they can just eat it up in a second. So yeah, I mean, people get to they'll get to level to 80, 90 in the first day, second day, right, in MMO. It's wild.
Hmm. And then they're going to be left scratching their heads
They're
going,
scratching their heads. I'm
oh,
bored.
what do I do now? I'm level 1000. I have all the gear. I have all the stuff.
What do I do
What
now?
else you got? And
Yeah,
again, it's on one hand really great as a developer that you have those committed fans, but it also means you are now shackled to them.
yeah,
And one of the things that I talked about in the book and in previous posts is that there's basically three kinds of people who are going to play a live service game. The casual people who are coming in trying to figure out, okay, what is this going to be about? Do I like it? Am I going to stick around? You have your core audience. These are people who've, hey, I like this game. It's pretty fun. I'm going to play it. Maybe I'll play it daily, but, it's going to be a regular game. And then you have your hardcore, okay, this is my daily game. I'm streaming it. I'm, top 100, top 10 in the server. I want to play this game as much as I can. And you need all three groups to be coming in and playing your game. Because if you lose any one of those three, your chance of survival are just diminished.
definitely. Yeah, you need a balance of all those. Like you need new players, you need the mid core, and you need the hardcore, right? Because if you have nothing but hardcore, you can't bring no casuals will come in, and no mid core will come in. So definitely need a mix of all of those to keep the game going. And it's like the thing with TF2.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, it became all bots, right? That was the thing that everybody's playing bots. There's a lot of cheating going on, and it wasn't being maintained, and so that's what can happen there.
Yeah, and that is another really big point. That one of the big challenges I think for a lot of live service games is how do we cultivate the casual or new people coming in at the
Mhm.
same time we're appeasing your hardcore? Because the
Right.
middle of your game, that should be relatively stable. Once you've gotten your game done, you shouldn't really be touching that. But the star of your game, that is a huge deal. Because if somebody new comes into your game and is like, oh my god, this looks horrible, I have no idea what I'm doing, they're not going to stick around. They're not even going to give your game a minute.
And then it also like as hopefully if it's your game's been going along, you have to update the onboarding process as the game because oh my, I've played games where again the onboarding is completely different from
Yeah.
the onboarding is completely different from the end game. So you gotta constantly, like you were saying, update the onboarding, change it so it affects so it's concurrent with how the game is now. That always has to be adjusted.
Yep, and this is one of the issues I had with Dead by Daylight, that its onboarding is just woefully lacking because they have not updated the actual onboarding in the past 6 years. And that means that all the new features, all the new rules and mechanics and perks and all that,
Wow.
no new player's gonna know about that. You can't even test a new killer out unless you spend money on them in the first place. And again, that is an awful onboarding. And you need to consider again, if your game is fundamentally different year three as it was in year one, you may have to completely rebuild your onboarding progress or your casual or the tutorials of it. Because
Yeah,
again, if
definitely.
people aren't, if it's completely different, you're hurting your player base. And also, if we look at kind of games that get very long, like World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, and when we go from level 80 cap to maybe level 100 and so on, that whole process of getting there may be very frustrating to a new player. So if
Yeah.
we can change that, I think that was one of the things that World of Warcraft did, and I think in a major update was they completely redid the entire leveling and quest structure. I think this was like 4 or 5, maybe even longer
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a very big deal, and they had to do that because as a new player, you don't want a new player to feel bored. They don't want to wait to get to the good stuff 100 hours down the line.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to make them feel like the you have to get to end game and then that's the only fun part, right? So this whole beginning grinding up the whole
Mhm.
onboarding is just this boring process because it's not been updated and it's so old and archaic compared to the new game's mechanics. Yeah, and it could definitely just push people away, or they don't even know, right? Once they finish the game, then they finish the onboarding and the game's completely different. then they're used to the tutorialized portion or how that gameplay is, and it's completely different. And they're like, "What's going on? I don't know how to use." Like you were saying, none of the characters, none of the items. So all that has to constantly be updated, right?
Mm-hmm. And it can be a lot of work, and again, deservedly so. That if you have 6, 10, 15 years worth of content, you need to make sure that people are able to still experience that. And I see Mr. Game in
Good
Chat's
question, man.
question there. And I talk about this in my book as well, but I'll throw it to you first and then I'll answer. So, what do you
Okay.
consider?
I think Final Fantasy 14 is doing it really good right now as a games live service. It's probably I say I think they're doing it best. Like the way they tastefully do they have an online shop so you can buy stuff and then the game, right? And it's separate, so it's not pay to win. There's none of that. And it's very tasteful. It doesn't it's not overly intrusive with like microtransactions and stuff, and they constantly update. So I think 14 is doing it really good. What do you got, Josh?
I talk about this in the book, but I would say Path of Exile and Warframe are
Roller
really
right on.
good simply by the fact that if you don't spend 1 cent in those games, you still have a full feature, entire single player, I mean multiplayer game for you to enjoy.
Yeah.
And like with a lot of the mobile games that I've played, it's still very difficult because they're still tethered to that, mobile monetization.
Hmm.
And like one game, I was trying out that game Azure Lane, and the problem with that one is that they have not really. They have done slight UI UX updates to the game in the last 3 4 years thereabout, but it's still annoying to play, and I think that is a very big deal. That if there are quality of life issues with your game, especially if there was stuff there in the beginning, maybe because you weren't aware of it, or, that was just kind of like how you built the game to start with, you have to change that. And a good example of this that came too late was when I was trying to play the game Punishing Gray Raven. This was another mobile game that it was a pain to do the daily content because you have to interact with it every single time and just do the same exact things. And they eventually changed it so it will just autoplay. But this came months after its release. By that point, I was already tired of the game. I recently tried it again like 2 weeks ago, but by that point, the magic was gone. And like we said, once someone has kind of stopped caring about your game,
Yeah. Yeah,
even
man.
if you do release new content, even if you are keeping it updated, if you've already lost that initial hook, they're
Yeah,
not
once
really gonna care.
the vibe or the feeling about the
Mm-hmm.
game that they had, it's like it's disillusioned. It's gone, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't however they felt about it, they're like, "Oh, I like that game," or "I want to play it." And if you stop playing it, for some reason were dissatisfied with it, you're always going to have that taste in your mouth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what if you do go back to it, you're still going to remember the things, and you're going to think, "Well, if I had a problem with that," it's always going to be in the back of your mind that the game
Mm-hmm.
didn't fully satisfy you from the start, right? There's always something wrong, even if they fix it.
Yeah. Like right now in Azerland, they just do like another like ultra rare, super duper ultra ship reveal. I'm like, okay, I did a few pulls. I'm like, okay, like, but like, and the following I was like, what am I really going to use this character for? Like, I'm not really playing this game anymore. So I just ended up uninstalling the game. And again, it's that challenge, especially if you go back to a game and all the same issues that you had with it haven't been fixed or addressed. And
Right.
this is again why UX is such a big deal for live service games. Because if something annoys you, when you first play and then you come back and it's still there, it's like twisting that knife a second time.
Take time, man.
Because now you're, as you say, you're no longer having that passionate love affair with this game. Now it's just like,
Right.
I guess I gotta log on, I gotta do my dailies. Ugh, what's this again?
Mhm.
And at that point, even if you do release new content, again, even if you do have that major yearly anniversary or we're going to throw all this free stuff at you, you're still at this where it's like, yeah, it's free stuff, but it's free stuff to a game that I'm not even enjoying anymore. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not. It's just again like it's like giving someone like a dollar gift card for their birthday. Yeah, it's $1. Yay.
Exactly. But yeah, Warframe is a good example of that. I mean,
Hmm.
they have amazing community engagement.
Hmm.
They've like the game has organically changed and updated. There was even like a weird bug, like a flying bug that they discovered and the devs left it in because the community loved it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, that is definitely one of the top ones for sure. Warframe, good example.
Yeah.
If you want to study, is a good one to study. But of course, got to study the failures,
Yes.
what not to do wrong probably instead.
And there are a ton of them on PC, console, and on mobile.
Hmm.
If you just like throw someone a bunch of dollar gift cards, they're like, "Oh, that's great." Yeah, and again, like Warframe is another interesting point because if you look at it from the outside, it looks heavily pay to win. I mean, the storefront is so like entangled in the entire game. And I
Right.
am sure there are tons of people who have wrote a forum post saying, "Is Warframe pay to win? Warframe is pay to
Pay
win.
to win.
How is this free to play?" and so on. But again, it is one of the few examples of a game that if you don't spend a cent, you get a full featured game. Nowhere will the game stop you and say, "Oh, you didn't spend this amount of money. You can't do this." It's locked away from you. And that was a lot what was the major attraction of Team Fortress. That through the box or the loot system and just general rewards, you don't have to spend a cent to play that game. But again, it's one of those points where you have to plan this out. And we could certainly talk about monetization systems. I mean, that was a big point in my next book, but that could probably be another topic or two for these
Yeah,
shows.
definitely. Monetization itself is just a whole can of worms. I mean, you're writing,
Hmm.
a book on that thing.
Yeah, and to Algora's comment about no weapon dependency and less carpal tunnel, again, quality of life is a very big deal. If something is annoying, even if it's only 3 to 5 seconds of annoyance, that's 3 to 5 seconds that builds up. That if every single time I do X, I get some annoyance, that again, it's all that kind of pain point tolerance that starts
Right.
building and building. And if you can fix that, if you can remove those pain points, if you can make something as easy to get into and as approachable, people are going to resonate. And there's a reason why people will support games like Arknight or Path of Exile or Warframe by the fact that if they enjoy the game so much, if they see developers doing that job, they're going to throw money at you just to say thank you. Now, again, though, I want to clarify that is the extreme, that is like perfect monetization for your game. Most developers are not going to get to that level. Again, that's when we have like, if you have a game that's like 6, 10 years of support, you've certainly succeeded. And I think for a lot of mobile developers, was oftentimes considered like the first medal on your shirt is 1 year. That if you
One
can
year.
make it 1 year as a live service game, you
Yeah.
know, you're on your way. And I want to get to Mr. Game Watch's question in a second, but before I forget, Genshin Impact, clearly a big example. I believe it is either the number one or the number two best selling gacha game. I think they pulled in like 50 or $55 million in December of 2022 or
Oh,
something, or January of 2022. Like they MiHoYo, they planned this out. Like they had
oh
the
yeah.
experience
Oh
from
yeah.
Honkai. I'm pretty sure they have the next 5 years of
Guaranteed.
content of what they want planned for that game.
Guaranteed. Yeah, there is no way. I mean, you can literally just tell when you step into the game how
Mm-hmm.
everything's set up that they planned this game out to be live service for like as long as they can do it. It's brilliantly like done the way they pulled it off, I believe.
Yeah. And to Mr. Game and Chat's question, what game genres are there, any new ones? That is the tough point. And I talked about this again. Again, I'm throwing all this marketing promo to go buy my next book. But if we were talking like 10 years ago, the mobile or live service genre was going to be RPGs, city builders or very light city builders, the Farmville clones, and so on. A lot of what has changed in the last like 3 to 4 years of mobiles particularly has been creating new game genres or working with new games and designs to fit in their monetization and live service. Oh no, am I going? Alchemy Stars. So I always forget that name. That was a game that was built off of the grindstone model of having to like draw the lines and the path around, and that's a full-on gotcha mobile game. A lot of mobile developers right now are really looking into more action RPGs, more open world. The Idle MMO is a very popular one that people are still developing. What was it? Black Desert Online, I think, is like the current king on that one. And really, again, like a big point about what has changed in mobile has been figuring out where can we go that no one else has attempted, and can we become, the standard. Arknights was the standard of kind of the tower defense gotcha kind of design. Azure Lane was the ship girl shmup kind of design. And again, Dragon Ball Legends, and even going back to some like Marvel Contest of Champions, was this fighting game built on gotcha and the whole Marvel brand and so on. And you really do need to figure out how, where can I go? Because the one thing you do not want to do is directly try and beat someone. Again, like no one has dared to try and directly compete with Genshin or Honkai Impact, and we've seen a few developers try to compete with Arknights. There was one of these games I tried like a year or so ago, which I do not remember the name at all, and I have heard nothing about it. And again, another thing, I think we talked about this either last or the week before when it comes to studying a genre. Yeah. Is that look to see where somebody's messing up. Again, all those pain points and UX issues I mentioned, if you can correct all that and do it better and really promote the heck out of it, especially in the mobile space, because a lot of mobile developers or a lot of like mobile YouTubers and streamers are always looking for the next approachable game. Ni no Kuni apparently has now a mobile open idle MMO gotcha game that just came out. And I was trying out this new one, Counterside, which has perhaps like some horrible drop rates. It's like a 3% on a super character, and then for the banner character, it's a 1% chance of getting them. So the whole point everyone is doing right now is they're re-rolling their accounts as many times as they can to try to get that character before they lock it in. And it's very fun to repeat the same 5 minutes of gameplay for like 40 minutes to try and do that. And it just proves how bad my luck is sometimes with these games. Let's see. Yeah, and again, to Mr. Game and Chat, definitely look for where you can go. That game World Flipper, it's a pinball gotcha game. No one else even thought about doing something like that, and it definitely did pick up. And again, I think another big point about these games is that you should not be expecting your game to be the next Warframe or the next Fortnite. It takes a long time for these games to blow up. And it's why, just as we talk about, I think with indie game development, it's a marathon, not a sprint. That you cannot just say, I'm going to release this game and tomorrow I'll be rich living off of a private island. The games that survive and thrive when it comes to live service, again, they're hitting year 2, year 3, year 4. Because once they get to that level, and this is something else I brought up, they become a fixture of pop culture. This is where we get the collab events and we get the marketing, all over the place. League of Legends has, metal records of their virtual bands. Arknights just announced, apparently for their last anniversary, they're going to do a collaboration with Capcom. So they're going to bring Capcom characters into Arknights. And they even did a collab 2 years ago with Rainbow Six Siege. They actually got Rainbow Six characters into that game. Again, like Street Fighter characters have been featured in a lot of mobile games as well. And this kind of stuff only happens, one, if you have a lot of money to throw around, and two, your game has to be big enough to kind of get the attention of those brands. Dead by Daylight added in the character from The Ring on top of all their other, Hellraiser, Halloween, Nightmare
I gotta
on
play.
Elm Street.
I gotta buy that character then.
Yeah. And again, this is the kind of stuff, as we said, that success breeds success. That once you've survived and you're thriving, it becomes so much easier for you to release a new bit of content and get everybody excited about it. And again, this is the goal of live service. I said at the start that when your game is that big, that you are just earning money hand over fist for new content like that, it becomes, again, that license to print money. At that point, in a way, it does become too big to fail. That unless you really screw up with your development, or you scream obscenities on all your social media platforms, you're pretty much on, I wouldn't say easy street, maybe moderate street.
Moderate street.
Yeah,
Moderate street.
Let's see. Free battle pass games. That's a good question to El Gordo, because for those of you who don't know, a battle pass system is the idea that you get a season or a group of content. The more you play, you unlock that stuff, and a lot of games will have a paid battle pass or the enhanced one that gives you more stuff, and oftentimes the free one is just like not good. Like it's just maybe every 8 levels you may get like a pin or a sticker, while the paid one, every level you get a custom unique skin or something like that. I can't think of I haven't played Deep Rock Galactic, so I don't know what they did with their battle pass. I can't think of a game that did it in a way that I really really liked. Any thoughts from you?
A good battle pass?
Yeah.
No, man. I cannot think of a good one. I cannot. No. Let me know.
Yeah. I know, and again, when we're talking about Battle Pass, we're not talking about like story-based content or new story stuff, which in of itself is another form of content you should be thinking about, even if your game is multiplayer. Because as we've said, I know we talk about lore and world building at some point, and we haven't. We'll probably do it on one of our future episodes, but people like to see these worlds expand. They don't want to see, okay, here's green soldier, red soldier, blue soldier. They want to hear all the lore about, all the Overwatch characters, or everything about Dead by Daylight, and so on. And this kind of stuff, again, it builds community interest. It gets people excited about these characters. We've seen, hundreds and thousands of, fan art. And people, again, like Team Fortress, all the machinima videos people have made for that game.
Ton of machina memes everywhere. Like that. The Team Fortress itself, the meme is just its own pop culture thing, right? Like that's amazing.
And again, that's how all this content. You need to be very smart about the content that you make for your game. You want people to see your game growing. They don't want to see you adding more price tags. This was a thing that really annoyed Payday 2 fans when they released their safes, that the only way you could buy or get access to them was to spend money. And this was after they said originally they weren't going to do a loot box system. So, all the pitchforks and fires were brought out for that.
Definitely.
Let's see.
But yeah, I mean, just players can tell if you didn't plan for the content. They can definitely tell when it's tacked on or added a mile away. I mean, like I said, gamers are so educated now. We know what's going on, so you can tell if it was planned or if it wasn't, and super evident.
Yeah, and again, I want to keep saying this point because I want to make sure it gets drilled into everyone's heads. personalization options is not new content. Because we've seen, especially in a lot of AAA and single player games, they'll say, oh, buy our season pass and you'll get months of new shirts and different vests and, paints for your guns. That stuff.
Stickers.
Yeah, exactly. Get stickers for all your hardcore machine guns there. That kind of stuff does not interest people when it comes to long term support. They want to see stuff that is game affecting.
That's like candy, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if we were saying meat and potatoes, the stickers and stuff, that's just like little candy and stuff, like a little
Yeah.
treat or whatever. It's not the main source, content. So, and yeah, so don't think that, okay, I'm gonna live service and give you costumes and shirts, and then you're just adding customization to the game, which most players would say should have already been in there already, and it doesn't add anything. So
Yep. And to Melwinius' comment, what do you think about holiday theme changes? That is another very popular thing that we've seen from a lot of live service, and even single player games.
yeah. Mhm.
Like for the month of December, all the enemies are replaced with snowmen, or all the guns are now snowballs. A killing floor. They have, famously had like complete, partial conversions of all their maps and characters and themes for the holidays. I think that stuff is great, but at the same time, like Josh has said, it's more like the candy. It's not the main course. The
Yeah.
good content that you want to develop for your game, and this is a term, I'm not sure how many people have heard this, it's evergreen, which means that it can be viable for someone who's played your game for 10 years. It can be still viable for someone who just started playing your game 20 seconds ago. Because again, it's all about being very smart with the content that you create. I need to talk about that in a critical thought, so I won't rant too much about that here.
No, man, keep going. Um, yeah, no, I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, like, you need to understand that whatever content you put out, people are going to either acquire it through in game if possible, or they're going to spend money and just get it outright. And you need to be thinking again, how much should somebody be reasonably spending in your game? And you don't want to put content in there that it's only viable for, let's say, 2 weeks in the month of October of 2019, and then after that, it's gone forever and nobody can access it.
Right. Right. I mean, back to the question about like seasonal events. I
Mm-hmm.
love them. I think they're great. But again, it's just candy, and it should be in the game if it's going to be in there. If it's an MMO, you have to have the season events. There's no
Yeah.
question, right? So,
Yeah. And I would also add that if you're going to do something seasonal with gameplay affecting content, you need to be really careful how you position that. A lot of mobile games will have limited events where a character or a specific weapon or something like that will only be available for 3 weeks, a
rage
month.
inducing.
And you have to be really mindful, especially if that is a major character. Again, I brought up my example when I played a Princess Reconnect, that they had a summer character who was like one of the best magic based characters in the game, and I didn't get that character. So basically, for the next 365 days, if I wanted to build a team, to go with magic, I'm completely SOL. There's literally nothing I can do because that character is not available, and it just soured me so much.
Makes you like it, okay, so in the idea of the developer's thinking, okay, it's Christmas time, everybody's gonna log in, they're gonna play and get this sword. But probably, like you said, you missed it, and instead you're mad because you missed. You're like, what? I don't have a chance
Mm-hmm.
to ever get it again, and so that really sours the experience, right? So yeah, be
Mm-hmm.
really careful about having like time limited, locked out stuff. Nobody really likes that kind of stuff. In theory, it creates like a demand,
The fear of
but not
missing
really.
out, FOMO, is a huge
FOMO.
point.
Instead, you're creating a just bunch of FOMO, right? So
Yeah,
everybody's FOMOing, and then you're just going to throw your game away and not play it because too much FOMO.
yeah. And again, it really goes to the balance of what your game is going to be about. If you're building, let's say you have a limited time character that only works on a specific map or is a specific type, and you have other characters who can fill that job or fill that void, okay, it hurts if I don't have that, but I'm not doomed if I don't.
Right.
If you build a character that, let's say, is the only character with this unique power that nobody else has a counter for, and, only 20% of your player base gets it, you're going to have an 80% of people who are going to really hate
Yeah.
your game after
Yeah.
that.
Yep. Indeed.
And to board fans, commenting thoughts on games such as can fix. Yeah, unfortunately, I think El Gordo beat me to it. You need more content.
Okay.
There must always, again, like we said earlier, you should always have a schedule, and you need to convey that to people. Even if it's only, let's say every 3 months we have a content update. You need to tell people. You want people to always know. Again, this goes back to early access games. They need to know what's in your game, what you have planned, and when is all that going to come out. And if you
Right.
miss the date, you need to explain that to people.
Right. Right. But again, that's it, but if you miss the date, communication, right? Transparency,
Mm-hmm.
communication with the community, and all that will foster goodwill, right? If you don't update it, if you don't listen to the players, if you don't respond to your community, you will die, right? So those are very important things that you
If the
need to do.
community feels like you are not listening to them, that is a major nail in
Yeah.
the coffin for your
Big
game.
time. Big time. When I was looking, I was looking at the TF2 tweets, the main thing is they're not listening to us. This is my favorite game. This is all I have. And
Yep.
like a lot of people, it's like their most important thing to them. What we talked about, some people only play one game. And so imagine when that one game is not being paid attention to, and it's this massive developer. And so, yeah, people get really angry.
And what you just said there is a very important point that when we have live service games that blow up, they will become somebody's one game.
Yep.
Again, like that is
Yes.
the whole goal of mobile games.
Yeah.
They want you to be playing this game, even if it's only 20 minutes of your life, every single day.
Right.
Like I said, one of the things I like about Arknights is I'm at the point now where I can do all the daily stuff in about 15 minutes. That if I just want to play this game one time a day for 15 minutes, I'm done. Where some other games, it's like, okay, you gotta play for 40 minutes, you gotta play for an hour. But again, that investment is a big point about consumer and community engagement. That if I am playing your game every single day, and your game and you're completely ignoring it or I'm not enjoying it, why should I stick around? And again, I think this is kind of the issue that Valve had. Like we said, I do not suspect anyone who worked on Team Fortress 2 expected to be still talking about this game
Not a
in
chance.
2022.
Not a chance, man. I mean, if you went back in time and told the developer that, they'd be like, "What are you talking about? We're gonna have flying computers and spaceships, and we're gonna be VR. Nobody's gonna be still playing this game, right?" I mean,
Game Newell's bill would just like grow like 20 feet right then and there when you would say that to him. And let's see, to Melwinnie's comment, yeah, achievements. Again, playing games have seasonal based content, they'll have seasonal rewards. One of the big things that a lot of mobile games will do is when they have like a new episode or a limited time event, they'll have a bunch of free resources and stuff tied to that event so that when you play for 2 weeks, you could be getting like several months worth of resources that it would take to do that daily. And again, that's another great way to incentivize people to play this stuff. As another big point, this is how a lot of free players will get premium currency. Because oftentimes they'll tie to completing those new maps. So that, if I do 10 episodes of story content, I may get, $5 of premium currency out of that, or whatever the denomination is.
right? Yeah, no, dailies are really important. Like getting the hooks in it's a live service game. You don't want them playing once and maybe a week later you want them playing as much as you can, every day, whatever the time, 10 a match here or there, or fight, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, but you want them playing every day. And so getting that engagement going will work.
Yep, and to Board's comment, yep, that we mentioned that earlier that people do not underestimate how fast somebody will go through your content. I still
Yep.
remember that joke from The Simpsons when like Bart playing this like God of War game, and in the time the guy spent explaining what the game is, he already completely finished the game, and he goes like, "But I've been working on this for the last 5 years. I missed my son's birth." He goes, well, yeah, you should just, well, maybe you should have spent some more time working on this game.
I didn't see that. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that clip.
And to, again, to MMO based content, this is again why you need to look at where you can grow this game. Again, if we look at something like League of Legends, they've kept to maybe, I think they're still using the same map. They may have like a second map for it, but it's still just one map. So
Yeah.
where the bulk of their development in terms of content goes is new champions. Because that stuff affects the gameplay. It really does when you create a new character who has new abilities and new rules. If you look at a deck builder, what changes that game? New cards, new
Cards.
booster packs.
Hmm.
And again, it's one of the things you have to think about. What can I reasonably change or add to my game that is the meat and potatoes?
Right. And so and then again, you have to consider when you're considering what can you add, how can you balance it?
Mhm.
What steps can I take to balance it? How can I check for balance? Is balance even necessary? Um, Game breaking things, all these kind of things need to be, bug testing and things like that for sure.
Yeah. And to Thousand's comment, again, like that was one of the big things about when Rami and I talked about kind of the golden age of MMOs, that they were so community driven because community
Hmm.
itself is a form of content.
Right.
As we've said, it's player generated content that when I'm with my friends, or if I'm competing with the number one guild, or if I'm trying to be the number one player, the developer just kind of set the pieces up, and then the players will run with it. But even in those games, you still need to come with content. It's just not as rigorous as with some other games. Again, this is kind of how Dead by Daylight gets away with, maybe every 3, 4 months releasing a new character. Is that it's so competitively driven that if I'm playing as one killer, I'm getting a completely different experience if I'm playing it with this killer, or with this killer, or I'm interacting with these survivors.
Right. Right. That's a good idea. Take away travel, take away forming groups, take away training. There's no reason to community. So you can make an MMO like that. An MMO with no community.
And we'll see how long that generally lasts. It will probably last until the second somebody actually gets through all the content, which will probably
Right.
be like a week. Oh
Yeah.
no, I've seen some people. I think there are guilds who like got through like an entire expansions worth of content like in a day
A
or in
day.
like
Yeah, they do
48
it in a day.
hours.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in a day. Like when like I was watching the last 14 expansion, it was like 80 to 90. One day, just everything, just all the dungeons, everything. And it's just like, well, don't you want to chew a little slower?
yeah. It must be nice to have that amount of time to
That's what
spend
I'm saying.
20
That's
hours
what
in a
I think. I'm
single
like,
game.
man, that's a lot of fun time right there. It must be nice.
Hmm. Now, we are a little over an hour. I think I have one other big point I want to bring up, but I'll throw it to you first. Do you have any other points on your
Yeah,
side?
so just the points when you're planning, be sure you're ready for this because even single player, multiplayer, it's gonna expand and become a massive deal, right? And you have to plan for this. So again, community is number one. Community is how the game's gonna live. Engage with community, be transparent. Plan. What am I gonna do? What can I add to my game? Maps, game modes, etc. What can I add to my game to add life? And again, you need to have a way for bug reporting, right? So when your game crashes, to keep it alive, to keep it going, you need to have actual bug reporting software so you can get the crashes and understand it and know what's going on. And then, and then again, the end of life support is another thing to consider. So, what you're going to do when you shepherd the game off, when you're like, I'm finally pulling the plug, how am I going to give this to community? Again, I think it's something it's very integral to every game because I almost wake up sometimes thinking about a game and I'm like, oh, all those poor players, what are they going to do? Like, you know what I mean? They've invested 20 years of their lives playing this and now they're going to pull the plug. What do you do? And is that
Hmm.
even like right? You know what I mean? So definitely end of life support also to be considered. And that's basically it.
Hmm.
Be ready for it, and make sure you can't do it solo. If you do, man, that's amazing. But you're gonna need a team. You're gonna need to plan to scale up and all that good jazz. So
Hmm. Yeah, and what you said about like with a single player game, again, it is very important to consider when people are going to play your game. And this is one of the things I think is very risky about developing a single player game around live
hmm
service content, is that it's
hmm
hard to tell when is your game complete.
right.
When all signals are go, we can play this game. Those are one of the things that stop me from really enjoying Phoenix Point, the other kind of XCOM like from Julian Gall. That the game has been out for I think like 2 years now, and they've put out like 6 different like DLCs. They've reworked the systems of this game multiple times, and it's definitely that issue of, okay, if I play it today and then you release a new patch next week, everything that I just did and know is now completely gone. The same thing with Anno. Anno 1800 has recently celebrated 4 years of support, which to the developers of that, to support a logistics strategy game for 4 years worth of content, two thumbs up for you. But the other point I mentioned this on Twitter is I have 4 years of DLC and I maybe have spent like 5 hours in that entire game. Like that is not even like a percent of the content in an Anno game. And again, it's that issue of okay, I'm going to start playing it, then you go announce another year, and then I'm going to wait, and then you're going to announce another year, and again, this is not the same as a multiplayer game where, again, multiplayer games are oftentimes designed, they want you to play this daily. For single player games, it's on your time.
Yeah.
But what are you supposed to do if every 3 months, oh, hey, we're going to add a brand new thing that's going to completely change how you play the game?
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a line to walk, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I guess with single players you can have like some fun daily challenges and things like that, like top score, whatever, depending on your game. But yeah, big content updates in a single player game can be tricky in that regard, right? If it's a single player, that would like drastically change the game, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So just be wary of that.
Yeah, and to Melini's come, I think EverQuest is actually still being supported. I think they just got an
Yes.
expansion like a
Yes.
year ago. Yeah,
It did. It's going great.
and again, like this is why these games are very popular, is that they can just keep their support. They keep their communities alive. People will keep coming back day after day, or expansion after expansion, and it really does. There's your comment. I think that's to the Josh on the right, not the Josh on the left. But again, it is the power of the community. It's why people. That is definitely a comment that I can't let YouTube say. When I just got blocked on my side there. But yeah, again, it is the power of the community. It's why when we see Warframe having their yearly TennoCon, why Final Fantasy has its massive conventions and people who are cosplaying and loving this game. It all adds up. It all creates this sense of value, and again, it makes these games bigger
Eager.
than what you would normally see. And again, it's why when a game like Genshin Impact or Final Fantasy or even Dead by Daylight, that when they start hitting years of support, they become fixtures in these spaces. And it's why it's very hard to kind of upset or upseat these games in terms of their general content.
Exactly. I'm looking at right now. EverQuest has 400 players right now playing right now. So that's, I mean, and the game was released. When did that one come out?
Original Epic was what, like 98,
99,
99,
98,
something like
98,
that.
99. Yeah. So still has like 400 players. It peaks at 1,000 in the day. So that's kind of wild.
Hello, Lukifa. Yep, and I guess the other point, this will be like my final point for the discussion, is supporting a game with new content. So this is something I'm going to talk about in the post and the video that I'm probably working on during Sunday. That's my work day these days. Is that for games that hit multiple years of support, it will oftentimes come the point where you need to create new systems, new elements to this game. And that is definitely high risk, high reward. That
Definitely.
if you do it right, you can greatly extend the life of your game because you now have a brand new system that you can support on top of everything else.
Yeah.
But if
Exactly.
you create something that people hate, that hurts your game, and then you say, oh, well, now we're going to support this as well, again, it can be like taking a torch to all these stacks of money you created.
Yeah, yeah, definitely have to walk the line. Again, be really careful. It's so tough. Listen to your communities, see what you can do, and like game breaking things again, you can just push the whole community away. Um, so it's really got to be really careful with that too.
Hmm. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And this is one of the things I've been like really noticing about with Dead by Daylight is that they really haven't done anything new systems wise. They've added new characters, they've had new rules. The same goes for Hearthstone with new cards, new boosters, stuff like that. And again, it's something you need to think about depending on the scope of your game. And I think this is one area where a lot of mobile games, especially RPGs, definitely have an advantage because they can add in a new system for combat or a new, gotcha collector or things
Right.
like that. And again, like the poster child would be Warframe. They've added in, completely new systems and
Did you play
content.
it when it first came out?
No, I played it, I think this was back in 2015,
Yeah,
2016, thereabout.
yeah. I played it when it first came out. And it was just a completely different game. Like
Mm-hmm.
even the movement felt like everything has been
Mm-hmm.
changed and tweaked. Completely different game, but still the same.
Yep. And again, that's why Warframe has kind of captured that specific gameplay. Because no one is going to try and come out day one and have the same amount of content and the same amount of variety as Warframe. And again, it's why these games, when they succeed, they can, again, it becomes very hard to get rid of them. And I'm trying to think if there's one other point. I think, again, to build what Josh said, that again, you need to plan this stuff out. You need to assume or think about, okay, if this game works, do we have additional content? And sometimes you may have something on the cutting room floor. Maybe it's another level. Maybe it was
Yeah.
a sword or a new
Secret
character.
levels.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that could be something you could add if people want. But again, you have to, or you should always consider, when do we pull the plug? If it's a single player game, you could just say, I will give you 3 DLCs. We're done. That's
Yep.
it. No more content. And again, you'll have people who will hate you for that. They will say, oh, well, I want to support this game. Why are you working on 10 more expansions and 30
Yeah.
more levels? But again, as a developer, you need to kind of pick and choose where you can focus on. And again, there is nothing wrong, again, on the flip side, nothing wrong with saying, well, maybe I can make a year or 2 years worth of additional content for my game if people support it. But conversely, you should not feel pressured to have to do that. And again, transparency is king. If you want to tell
Right.
people that if my game blows up, I have 10 years of content coming to it,
Hmm.
go for it. Just if you say, if it blows up, that's
That's
it.
it. That's it. Working.
Supergiant. Like, Supergiant has not really supported any of their games content wise after launch.
Right.
And they get away with it because they're so high quality.
Polished, high
Yep.
quality polish. So like you said earlier, make sure 1.0 is the best it can be, right? And so the more polished, the better it is. You're just way off, way better off.
Yep. And I think that's a really good like final lesson to end on is that live service will not fix a bad game.
Exactly.
This is what
Exactly.
the person who did the Valve talk at GDC said that If you expect your live service to fix the issues or save your game, it's not going to happen. People will only support a game if it's good. If it's not good, they're not going to give you 60 to $100 more to hope that you
Right.
fix that game.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, of course, games have long tails, and we can, like Final Fantasy 14 is an
Mm-hmm.
example, but they had way more money than any indie developer will ever have to try and fix their game, right? So again, 1.0 has to be think Nintendo quality for your 1.0. It's on a cartridge and it's sealed, and I have to, yeah, you can
Mm-hmm.
patch your game, but try and get in that mindset of my 1.0 is on a cartridge and you can't update it.
Yeah.
Maybe if you think like, but if you think that, oh yeah, I can push it out and I'm going to update it, that's not a good way to think about it. You should definitely be thinking my 1.0 version is the final version, and for now, right? Not for
Mm-hmm.
now, but it's the final and the best version that I can do at this time. Let's
Yeah.
say that.
And since we came with the meat and potatoes analogy, last week was all about pizza. This week
That's
is about
right,
meat and
pizza and no
potatoes.
meat potatoes.
Yeah. That the live service is like the gravy. It is the stuff that adds on. It's you don't want to give someone just a plate of gravy and say, "Okay, here's your
Right.
dinner." Because again, people are not going to stick around and wait for your game to get good. And as another final lesson, if it's a multiplayer game, make sure your servers are working day
Working,
one.
working.
Because you
Yeah,
do not want to release your game and then, oh,
that's
the servers have crashed and they won't come back up for the next 12 hours.
that's like the one of the biggest, like, like release like blunders, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it generates so much bad publicity and like so much bad, like all people are talking, oh well, your IT's bad, your network code is
Mm-hmm.
bad, the game is bad, nothing is good if your server fries. So make sure, yeah, that you can handle the capability. Like, yeah, for sure.
Yep, and it's definitely, I think, in today's market, you cannot use the excuse we didn't expect the
We did
demand.
not. Oh, I was just about to say that. We did not expect
Mm-hmm.
for this demand. Yeah, expect for the demand. You can look at other similar games, and you can. I mean, the stats are there, and you
And
can
you
say,
can
okay,
do server load tests as well.
server load tests. Exactly. All of the stuff is there to do
Mm-hmm.
that. So there's no reason. And I think more games have been launching, like more reliably late. But yeah, but it still happens.
Mm-hmm. And again, all this stuff, it can sink or swim a game.
Mhm.
And like we've said, you want to give your game the best possible chance because if a live service game does blow up, again, it affords your studio so much clout in the
Yeah.
space. Like the
Exactly.
perfect, like the dream would be that you support a game for like years on end. You say that okay, we're going to move on to a next game, and every single one of your consumers says, "Okay, here's my money. I'll buy your
Then
next game."
more, and then more, because it's like the news will be the developers of this amazing game that's been running for so long are finally working on the sequel, and then so it's just like double generation of like excitement. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and again, like it's going to be very interesting to see how Path of Exile 2 shakes out. Because it is
yeah,
very rare to see developers of live service games to work on a direct sequel. And like
yeah.
Destiny, I think would probably be like the example of what not to do. Because I keep hearing them like cutting content or they're locking it
Hmm.
away. And again,
Hmm.
like I could rant. Maybe I'll say that for the critical thought about that. You should not be locking away your own content like that.
Yeah,
Because we'll be here for
definitely not.
another hour or two.
Definitely not. Yeah, yeah, Dark Souls wouldn't agree with that at all.
Yeah. But I think that does it for me. Any
Yeah.
other final thoughts from you?
Man, I think we've covered it all. What's on the side note, the TF2 protest, or protest, it was like a peaceful protest, and one of the main things was they were not to be mean. Like they were like, don't be rude to the developers, don't harass the developers. So that I found was pretty interesting. As a side note, if you were looking at the Save TF2 thing, that they were trying to create a positive call to action to the devs instead of a negative, like, oh, you terrible lazy devs. It was more like, please fix our game, we love it so much. And they were, so that I thought was positive. So there's a positive light there.
Yeah, and to Malwinius' comment there about arcade games, again, like that's something that Chris talked about a lot on our multi-hour chat there. That if you are trying to succeed, you have to keep your goodwill up. If a
Hmm.
live service game ends, if the developer says, "You know what?
Hmm.
I woke up today, I stubbed my toe, and I said I'm just going to cut the cord. I'm canceling all your accounts. Here, go buy my next game." Every consumer is going to be saying some things I can't repeat, or YouTube will
Right.
flag the stream.
Right.
And again, your goal in live service, as with everything else, is to build a reputable brand. You want
Yep.
people to look at your live service game much as they look at your studio as something that they want to support because they want to see you succeed.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, live service, man. Like year one, boom, clout. Year two, so much more clout.
Mm-hmm.
Three, I mean, that's just yeah, definitely. It's a big thing for your studio. You can do that for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I think with that, we will end things for this week's chat. So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in live or recorded. Do the liking, subscribing, commenting. You'll find links to my stuff down below, as well as Patreon, Twitter, and Discord up there on the overlay.
All right, and you know where to follow me at Twitter at casual_scrub, and follow me game development of Samurai Pig, and I stream development on Twitch. And I'll see you guys next time.
Yep. We will be back next Saturday around 5 p.m. ET for the next show. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, whereas in the art and science of games. And Thorn, you are super duper late to the chat here. So I guess all we can say is hi and bye. But
Bye.
we will chat tonight for our game stream. So everybody, have a great night and see you next time.
See you next time.